Okay, I got a problem here that we encountered a few years back, and it wasn't on a car that was all that new, but it was an interesting problem. I actually even got some videos that I took of what was going on, so you get a little bit of a, this is just a standard, PowerPoint presentation where everything is just standing still. This is the car right here. You can see it's obviously sitting out here by our shop. There's the warehouse over there and all that. 93 Chrysler New Yorker, erratic gauges when using turn signals or headlights. All right, that sounds simple enough, isn't it?
Drive straight.
Whenever you turn on your turn signals or your headlights, the gauges go crazy. This is what it's talking about over there. All right, so you might not know it, and I may have seen this, mentioned this before, but there's 250 cars for every service of A in America. I found that out at one of the conventions I go to, and I was one of the keynote speakers when we went into one of those things and was talking about that. Vehicles, everybody depends on the vehicle. You got the people that, everybody depends on the vehicle, whether it's to deliver stuff to them or whether it's to take them somewhere, or even the people that can't drive. But there's more cars in this country than there are registered, drivers that have driver's license. You got more cars than you got registered drivers. So, and here you got a ton of, and these cars are all, cars that can be driven on the road. In this country, a lot of families have got more than one or two cars. But they need gasoline. It's got to be added regularly, no matter what the price of the pump. It doesn't matter what the price of the pump's going to be. You're going to have to put gas in it. When you pull up there, you're going to get it. One time I found myself really low on gas going across the Chafalaya Basin out there. That bridge, if you've ever gone out there on Interstate 10, is 18 miles long. And it's sort of like a causeway that goes across there. And there was one exit right in the middle of it. And I noticed that, it said that they claimed there was gas down that exit. And so I went and when I exited, there was an RV parked there, but I didn't think about stopping there to get gas. And I just went on down there to where there was alligators and stuff, and way off down there. And when I pulled up to the pump, it said the gas was 75 cents a gallon. I said, I am not paying 75 cents a gallon for gas. I will run out and walk with the alligators first. And so I drove back over there to the place where the RV park was and found out they had some pumps there. And I got gas for 40 cents a gallon, which is what I was used to paying. But those people way out there in the sticks, they wanted the big money for the gas, right? All right.
Shoot.
Oil changes are stuff that you ought to do. A lot of people, what tickles me whenever somebody goes to, when they tell them they need an oil change, this oil is really in terrible shape, They're not touching the stick and all. They say, well, it still runs good. I mean, you're going to wait till it starts running bad before you change the oil. I mean, that's a bad one. I don't know how many times I've heard people say it still runs good. And then there's the other friend of people that when the check engine light comes on, they pull it over and they check their water and their oil, and they want to see what's, if they're checking their engine, to see, or looking for whatever. But you got fuel, air filter, belt, spark plugs, transmission service, brakes, tires, cooling system service, and all that. I had a powder puff ladies car care seminar in here one time. There's 12 women in here, and I was telling them every car needs its own bank account. I mean, your car needs a bank account. Your car needs to have, you need to have money put aside in your bank account for normal maintenance. Like, the stuff, you're going to have, basically have like brakes and your oil changes and all that. Then you should be sloppy about it. Whenever I worked for this guy that had a bunch of helicopters, every helicopter he had its own bank account. He knew how much it was going to cost to maintain those things. And so that's what he did on there. But anyway, there's regular scheduled maintenance items. And if a vehicle don't give trouble, even if they don't give trouble, a smart driver will set money aside for car repairs. And that's according to the owner's manual schedule, rather than being blindsided by a catastrophic failure because you've neglected stuff. All right, so they get things going fixed. There's a lot of people that expect an awful lot from their car. They just drive it and 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 drive it. And they do workarounds. When something starts acting up, like that one girl had that really harsh shifting transmission, found out she could feather the throttle and it wouldn't shift so much. You know what I mean? So she drove it like that a long time before she ever got anything done about it. And I was talking about that one time in here. The problem that develops doesn't make the car dangerous or untrustworthy. Sally or Joe can drive it the way it is. And there's loads of people that do exactly that. They just keep on driving it, as long as it'll run. And all that. I see some really nice vehicles sitting there with grass growing up around them. You can tell they've been parked a long time. You ever see those? Nice looking vehicles. And there's like a looked like a 2001 or 2002 Chevy pickup sitting where the grass had grown up around it out there by this one farmer's house out there. I don't know if it was running when he parked it or not, but it kind of makes you want to stop and say, hey man, you want to sell that truck? You know, I think I could probably get some good out of it, you know. How many check engine lights stay illuminated, covered up with the, you know, your girlfriend's picture or whatever, you know, for a long time? And what I usually tell people is it can either flash or it can come on steady. If it's flashing, it's skipping and you need to do something for sure. If it just comes on, it may not be running bad at the time, but the problem is trouble keeps piling up behind it. And then when you finally decide to get it turned off when it starts running bad, they'll say, well, you need this, you need this, you need that, and you need the other stuff that you would have fixed as you went if you'd have kept the light turned off. Makes a mess. Anyway, how many fuel gauges have you seen? You know, that are just waggling all over the place or unreliable or won't work right and all that kind of stuff. People drive around at night with gauges they can't see because of the illumination. All right, now this lady right here, she said, I've been everywhere. I've been everywhere. And in this town, I guess anyway, I don't know what town she lived in, but she said she's been everywhere. And she said she paid several different shops to repair her wave engagement concern, but all they did was change some parts like headlamp and turn signal switches and who knows what all else. This was her instrument cluster. That's a picture of it, what it looked like. And she had changed some more parts herself, but to no avail. I don't know how much money she spent, but this thing was a counterman's dream, boy. I mean, a counterman could sell her some parts. All right. But when you're tracking a problem like this one, you got to look for common denominators. I'm always telling you guys that. Always look for common denominators. And sitting in the seat of the New Yorker, we found out that the gauges went crazy, but with the idea related symptoms might help isolate the source of the concern, we gathered some more data. So the volt and temperature gauges would react to the operation of the turn signals. When you turn on the turn signals, it would do this. You know, they would just go up and down. I used to see these motorhomes that would come in, and whenever you would, they would say the temperature gauge doesn't work right. It would be reading cold, and you start to drive off on that motorhome, and the temperature gauge would go all the way to hot while you were driving off. Then when you slowed down, it was like the temperature gauge was trying to act like a speedometer. And so I say, and I get under there and look, and the big ground wire that the motorhome builder had put between the engine and the frame was too thick and too stiff, and as the engine torqued, it would break that lug where it went over, and we would put these braided ground straps on there, and in fact, the frame wasn't grounded to the engine, was what made the gauge act crazy. I've seen that kind of stuff. Well, the speedometer would swing to their stop. I mean, excuse me, everything but the speedometer would swing all over the place. We did that. The volt gauge to below 8 volts, the fuel oil and temperature gauge to their high side. All right, now if I can get this to play, this is a video right here. This will play. All right, now you're going to turn on the turn signal. We're waving at her. All right, now I'm going to turn on the park lights. I'm going to turn the dash lights off. Turn the dash lights off and turn normalize, right? So you turn the dash lights off and everything goes back like it ought to be. That's what it looked like. Now you're going to turn on the turn signal. All right. So it's best to determine where to look first before twisting any fasters or popping any panels. Was this likely to be related to a blown fuse? Not likely. Right? And it didn't smell like a power side problem to me, but that doesn't take long to check fuses, so we did. All right, so we checked the fuses and it went nowhere. All right, but the instrument cluster's got 3 different grounds. Pin G on the round 11-pin instrument cluster collector. Chrysler used for so many years this connector on their back of their cluster, this round 11-pin thing. Could G stand for ground, or was it, in other words, these cavities were actually alphabetic, and G was that one. All right, and you can see that G was basically getting its ground through this one right here, through that splice, that's Z80 or 8Z1, and it would come over here and it went to that. Well, that's basically the ground. Now that ground was fed out to other stuff too, you know, and all that. So anyway, that's where we were on that. So we analyzed the symptoms. My idea was the instrument illumination bulbs, the turn signal indicators, and the crazy gauges were sharing the same ground, and then for some reason that ground had been lost. Now this is what that looks like closer. That's G, that's the pin we're concerned about right there. Okay. And so if this was the case, the bulb filaments would be providing a ground path for the gauges till the bulbs were illuminated. Simple theory, but what do we need to do to find out what it is? What's going on there? Okay, so this is what the printed cluster looks like. You know, instrument cluster, printed cluster looks like. Now you might notice this is not looking at the back of the cluster. You're not looking at the back of the cluster, you're looking at the cluster from the front. And it's like you've stripped everything away except the printed circuit, because you remember the voltmeter was over, well that's oil pressure gauge, I'm sorry, it was over there, and the voltmeter's over here. And that's what it was, there's the fuel gauge right there, and the coolant gauge and all that, but whatever. Anyway, I always get confused when I'm looking at this, because it seems like when I'm looking at it, it's a mirror image of something. Whatever happens, it doesn't matter. This right here is the pin in question right here. And see all the stuff it feeds? I actually painted that trail with a little bit of yellow. It goes over there, it goes up here to this one, it feeds over here, that's where these printed circuits operate anyway. These two share the same ground, and it goes over there. See? And that's basically how that's done. There's your, and like I say, there's a round connector that we got there. Okay, now then, we already looked at it, I'm not going to go through that one again. But from the initial data, we couple our careful study. There was a ground lug at the left side of the kick panel that feeds the ground through splice 8Z1, this ground right here. So we checked that one there. You know, we would pull the kick panel aside. Make sure you get your terminology right. The some of the people call that a kick panel, some call it a cowl, some call it a fascia. You don't ever know what you're looking at. The instrument panel connector, the same splice feed 6 other grounds. You know, we talked about that earlier. So we pulled it out. Shannon found the ground point to be clean and tight. Some other circuits fed from the ground through key-in switch ground. It worked fine. The headlamp switch ground for the courtesy lamp worked fine. If there's other things being fed by this same ground that work just fine, then you're barking up the wrong tree. That's the point, right? And the heated rear window switch, all that other stuff worked just fine there. So, should we feed our own ground in there? Now, a lot of the times, you're really good wiring people. You know, if you've got an idea that I'm not getting a ground on this and you know you're on the right wire, what you can do is say this right here should be grounded and it's not grounded and that's not working over there. And so they'll take their little prick tool or something and prick into the wire and put a ground to it, and if that fires up, then you kind of get an idea of what you need to do. A lot of times running an overlay, you remember what I told you about running an overlay? If you run an overlay, meaning if you're going to clip out the circuit that's there, first you got to make sure that there's not a place in the middle of that that splices off and goes everywhere else that you're clipping out of there. If it's shorted to power and you don't want it to happen, even after you do your overlay, you got to clip it completely out. You can run the overlay, you know, without clipping it out, but you need to make sure when you do it in a way that it will look good and it won't get in trouble, and it'll be maybe in a loom or in the existing loom so that it looks factory when you're done, because you don't want to look like those second-rate amateurs been in there, right? Because somebody come along and look at what you did and say, who did this? You know, this one guy, there was a doctor that brought a Jeep to us. It was brand new, and he had it at some window tint shop, and they had put some kind of anti-theft system on it for him. And I found that out, and it was basically whenever I went to start it, you know, I would drive it, and when I went over bumps, it would try to cut up and stall. And I went under there, and hey y'all. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I actually put the key in the cup holder, and he put it back on the inside so that you know when you open it. And when you drive it, that light should go out.
Okay, thank you so much.
Well, it's no wonder you were chomping at the bit to fix that girl's car. She's a pretty girl, yeah. All right, so anyway, on the round connector, and we were going to feed a temporary ground in there. And that's when things got really interesting. You know, when we started giving in there, we said, if we're going to feed a ground, like if we just clip the wire at G and we put a ground in there, you know, what's going to happen there? Well, he found that he could manipulate the connector, that round connector on the back of the cluster, with the key and the panel lamp switched on, and watch the gauges normalize. You know, he could actually move that thing back there. Well, sometimes that's tricky, but when you're moving something and you're seeing things change, and it's a good idea to be watching when you move the stuff. You know, like I always used to tell you, if you'll take a test light and you'll set it up so that as your short comes and goes, that light will go on and off. That's the way you find something. You need something to indicate, or a buzzer, or whatever you can hook up, something that will go beep like that, and whenever you're moving it around, you know, you'll hear it come and go, and you'll say, ah, it's right here. And then, but if you just start yanking on the harness and you ain't got no indication, and all of a sudden the problem's gone, you know what to do to fix it. And you know it's gonna work its way back over and come back again, you know, because it worked its way over to begin with, you know, so, and this is what we were doing here. Okay, so this is another video. We'll turn that thing off, and let me see if we can make this play. What do you got? Right, you're putting pressure on the connector, pulling it down, right? Mm-hmm. All right, do that again. Pull it down. So you pull it down, hold it there so it stays fixed. If you hold it steady and everything has a chance to go back where it was. Yep, there you go. Yep, there you go. All right. On this vehicle, Chrysler used a printed circuit about as thick as a dime. In other words, this printed circuit was not the old soft floppy plastic printed circuit. It was basically a printed circuit that was thicker and more substantial than that. And generally, on the later clusters, Chrysler generally has male pins on the board rather than a flexible printed circuit. That's what these were. And this was pin G right here. And that's the exposed copper ends down there. All right, and so this is what I located on there. See that? See, that was tight. That one there's loose. There's our trouble right there. Yep, there's our problem right there. And we have to jiggle that again, don't we? That's how I fixed it. I could have bought a $115 printed circuit board, but it'd take a while to get it. And we soldered that pin right there and took care of the whole problem. Pretty good little deal there. All right, you're getting something out of this. You know, like a lot of times on some of the other clusters, there'll actually be the cluster will fold in, and they'll have these little the cluster will fold in. They'll have these little hump-shaped, you know, terminals lined up that will go in there and match up with them. And what the deal is on that is they get chalky and get to where they have a bad connection, and you jiggle them around. And on some of the Jeeps we used to work on, there was a problem where the instrument cluster would just go off driving down the road. And we would actually have to pull the cluster out of there and clean all the pins up and put some stuff they call now gel on it that was supposed to keep that from ever happening again. And I don't know how many of those we did. But a lot of times you'll have the actual cluster connectors built into where they're actually fixed, and when you slide the cluster in there, it bites in.
You get 5 quarts in that engine.
Yeah?
It's supposed to be 4.
Oh, it stops on 4?
And that's what I mentioned to you this morning,
Yeah, I probably wasn't listening. Yeah, I probably wasn't listening when you mentioned it. He can get it out there. But anyway, what the deal was, this thing right here, on some of the older cars, they'd actually have the cluster, the connector, and when you slide the instrument cluster in it, and it's hard to troubleshoot those, because you can't reach behind it and fool with the connector, you know what I'm saying? So you basically, when in doubt, and this is really important, pay attention to what I'm telling you, if you've got those connectors everywhere you're trying to deal with them, of course most of the connectors now, these little pin connectors, you can't tell much about them. The pin fit's important. And the really, really good mechanics will take these connectors and they'll see if they've got, when they're sliding it, like numbered drill bits, and they'll find one that's just the right size. And you got to be particular when you do this. You got to measure the pin, make sure the drill bit's the same size as the pin. And when you slide that drill bit in all those pins, you can tell if one of them's loose, because a lot of times it'll be pin fit. I used to take some of these engine control problems that I have on some of the Fords that had the split round pins that were similar to this stuff right here, and I could take the engine controller loose and tweak every one of those and tighten them up just a little bit, and when I plugged it back in, the problem will be gone. And also in the early days of electronic lean burn on the Chryslers, what we would do is they had these brass colored pins, and if they were giving trouble, we would take them and clean them with a pencil eraser, because a pencil eraser will clean those things just about better than anything else you can do, even if they don't look dirty. A lot of times you can clean them with a pencil eraser and fix that kind of thing. So it's really important to know that when you don't have a good connection, especially if you just got a little whisper going through there and it's not pulling amps. If it's pulling amps, it looks like the blower connector that you were replacing yesterday. It's all melted down because of the current flowing through it, you know. But if it's just a little signal like for a gauge or something, you're gonna see something like that. Anyway, and I think that's about the last slide that I had. Well, the gauges cleaned up their act. They didn't have to dial the illumination lights down to see it worked really good. But they're not hard to figure out unless you're working without a wiring schematic. If you're working without a wiring schematic, you're liable to throw all kinds of parts at one trying to fix it, and she spent a whole lot of money. As it was, you know, we put some time into it, but it wasn't really that hard to fix it. And so, all right. Anyway, you guys need to be smarter than the average bear when it comes to electrical stuff, you know what I mean? Because that's where your money's made a lot of times. If you don't know electrical, and even down, one of the new instructor down at Diesel was saying that they were teaching a guy down there that they were gonna put to work somewhere. And he says, okay, we need to check you out on reading this meter and doing this electrical stuff. And he goes, hey, this is Diesel, I don't need to know that. And the place they put him to work called back and says, what have you been teaching this guy? He don't even know how to wire up an alternator. You know, he didn't think electrical was important. See what I mean? He thought grease and steel was all he needed to know. And so that's, you know, the people that do electrical stuff are the ones, they're gonna send you to electrical school before they do anything else with you if you go to work for a manufacturer. You know, electrical is something that you usually have to complete some stuff online, kind of like electricians, you know.
So now there's two instructors down there?
Yeah, there's